Hello, everyone, and welcome to this E1 webinar about Business Central change tracking and the options that we have and how we can configure Smart Connect from E1 to deliver better and quicker integration results. All right, so the agenda is pretty simple today. Give a quick introduction to E1 solutions and the E1 iPass for those of you that haven't had a deep dive into it yet. And then we're going to spend the majority of our time focused on change tracking. So we'll go over what is change tracking and what it means for Business Central integration. We'll look at how Smart Connect is utilizing change tracking and how it can simplify your integration build. And then I'll do a demo showing some examples of how quickly we can configure an integration that's using the change tracking feature in Smart Connect. And then at the end, we're going to close with a little bit of discussion around opportunities, scenarios, use cases to help understand when is change tracking a really good fit for a Business Central integration. So quick introduction to myself. I'm Ethan Sorensen. I'm the Director of Product and Solutions in EMEA. So I'm based out of our Copenhagen office, here not that far from the Microsoft office. And I've been working with Business Central since before it was Business Central with Nav and with financials. And so I'm familiar and worked with a lot of different projects across a lot of different verticals. And one of the features that we use very heavily on all Business Central projects is this Business Central change tracking. So I'm really excited to help you learn a little bit more about it and get started on using it in some of your own projects. So E1 Solutions, we've been around since 2001, delivering integrations and low-code solutions for customers. We're really devoted to providing a platform that allows you to deliver integrations quicker. So we want it to be something that doesn't require complex code and developers to build integrations. So today we're going to be looking at one of those low-code features that we've added based on feedback from our customers and partners about what limitations they have with the standard Business Central integration options. So what I want to spend most of our time on here is change tracking. So not getting caught up too much in all of the features and things that our platform can do, and we're really just going to focus on what is change tracking and why you use it. So when we started building our connectors and our platform around capabilities in the Business Central space, one of the limitations we ran into was the Business Central APIs. And they have been improved a lot since we started working with them in the mid 2010s, but they still have some limitations. So every Business Central customer is going to be unique. So they're going to have their own unique custom tables and fields. Those might be unique to their industry, to their environment. Maybe it's localization things. So a customer in the UK needs different taxing fields and requirements versus a customer in North America. They might have app source extensions, so you're getting custom fields and logic and things that are supported by a development team that provides an ISV solution. So a stat that I saw recently was Microsoft said the average Business Central installation has 30 extensions. So there's 30 different customized modules tacked onto the standard Business Central package for most customers. So all of those extensions means it's really hard to have a standard one-size-fits-all integration solution. So what we're looking at is how can we work with all of those customizations. So what Microsoft provides us is complex APIs. So they give us some powerful APIs, but they do have a few limitations. So there used to be SOAP APIs for Business Central. Those have been sunsetted, deprecated about a year ago. And now everything they have is built on OData REST APIs. They have the OData v4 APIs. This has been around since Nav 2018, I believe, or 2016, I think they introduced it, allowing you to access a Business Central page, code unit, or a query as an API object. So it was a really easy way to just expose all of that logic, all of that customization to the web. It's still supported today, and Smart Connect supports working with that. Then you move forward a few years and introduce standard APIs, and then eventually the standard API is V2, which we've had now for about 4 years. And this is a standard subset of APIs that Microsoft exposes for every Business Central deployment, on-prem or online, giving us the capability to pull data out of BC. The limitation of these is that they're not going to see those custom tables, fields, app source extensions. None of those customizations are shown, and it's only a subset of fields. So for instance, if I wanted to pull a list of customers through the standard API, I'll get very good performance, but I'm only going to get about 15 fields. The customer table has closer to 200 fields, so they're only exposing a very small piece of that data. So if your use case doesn't fit perfectly into what those APIs are designed to do, you're going to run into some limitations. So in walks custom APIs. So this is something any Business Central developer can add. So there may be custom APIs included in an app source extension. You might put them into your personalizations for this one particular Business Central deployment, but they're going to be a developer heavy process. So it requires a developer to write the AL code, send it through QA, do all the testing, generate it. Takes potentially days to create those APIs and expose them to the web and allow Smart Connect or Power Automate or whatever it is to be able to read that data. So there's a longer build time, more dependencies on third-party development, makes it a little bit more complicated, but that's going to give you the most robust options for external integration with BC today. So these are the options that Microsoft is providing you out of the box. So anyone can work with any of these features. What we've done with the E1 iPass and particularly with Smart Connect is we've expanded on that to find those limitations of what's there in standard Business Central and expanded on it to give us more capabilities and get around limitations without needing to always call on a developer because something isn't exactly standard. So we can handle those customizations. So our goal in the Business Central space is to really reduce that consultancy time. So particularly when we talk dev time, we're reducing that by more than 25% because we're allowing consultants, functional consultants, maybe even more of a technical power user to be able to take business requirements and build integrations based on those without needing to know how to write AL and work with REST APIs and how to create a logic app or a function app or whatever it is. There's lots of technologies out there. But we're trying to streamline it into just simple checkboxes and drag and drop interface. And we want them to be able to win more deals with competitive advantage. So if you're going up against one of the other ERPs like NetSuite, Acumatica, Sage Intacct, you're going to be going against some systems that are going to be better at one thing versus another, but ultimately it comes down to price. So how quickly can an integration be developed with those platforms compared to your Business Central integrations? So those customers are going to come, they're going to have Salesforce, Freshdesk, WooCommerce, whatever it is, and we need to be able to provide a solution that allows you to deliver those integrations for your customers quicker. So we want to make sure that when teaming up against those other ERPs, your competitive advantage is how quickly you can tie in all of the other apps that a customer is using. We always aim for no custom code. There may be scenarios where you need custom code. For instance, if you create a new Business Central table, we may not be able to push data into that table until you give us an API that we can hit. So we're going to do as much as we can to have no custom code, but there may be a few scenarios where some extra development is required, but it won't be as heavy as a full custom code integration project. It's just create us a simple API, and we'll take care of all the business logic and complexity from Smart Connect. And we'll let E1 handle all of that complexity. All right, so in enters Smart Connect's change tracking. So we have all of those limitations or complexities and different APIs that you can use. And although Smart Connect supports all of the APIs that Business Central gives us, we've taken it a step further and added support for change tracking. So in the E1 iPaaS, we have Smart Connect and PopDoc. Smart Connect is going to be all about moving the data. That's what we're looking at today. We have PopDoc for sharing the data, which I'll show a little bit of that bit later on. But when we move the data, we want to make sure we're only pulling the data that we need. So for those of you that haven't used Smart Connect before, this might be new. Otherwise, it's always a good visual to look back to. Smart Connect is going to allow us to integrate without having to write code. So we're able to take data from any of our data sources, push to any of the destinations. You can mix and match the connectors however you need to. And on that second tier there, we have our different triggers that we can use. And we could spend all day just talking about the triggers and the functions and when to use what. But in the Business Central space, the most popular trigger by far is the change track trigger. And that's what we're looking at today. But we do also support real-time and manual-based triggers. So real-time powered by webhooks, and then manual being just a static, give me a list of all active customers, or give me a list of all customers that are overdue on their payment. Static queries, not based on an event or an action that occurred in Business Central. All right, so I've touched on this a little bit earlier, but with Smart Connect, we're going to be trying to simplify the developer requirements of what needs to be done on a BC integration project. So we want to save developer time. So the developers shouldn't be involved in every step of the process. They shouldn't be creating events and subscribers and logic apps and job queues and complex code units and staging and logging tables. Like all of this architecture is powerful, but it's very time consuming. It's hard to maintain, it's hard to support. What we want to do with the E1 iPaaS instead is say, at most, give us an API page and we'll run with the rest. So we're not requiring a lot to come from those developers, allowing the integrations to be delivered by consultants and to hit better budgets, better timeframes for your customers. So change tracking. So there are standard options in Business Central for logging changes. Most modern web apps today will give you some sort of logging feature. So I want to start by establishing what is change logging versus change tracking. So change logging would be every time that a customer record is updated, Business Central can log what was the value before the change and what is the new value. So it can keep track of what if every time the posting group has changed or every salesperson that's been assigned to a customer, things like that. This is good from like an auditing perspective, but it's not really good from an integration perspective. From an integration, we want to push that data to another system. We don't necessarily want to know every previous value that it's had. So that's what we call change tracking, where we're just noticing something changed. So now we want to go and make sure that all of our other systems reflect that change rather than having it for an auditing standpoint. So when you build a change-based integration, you're going to get the best performance possible because we're only pushing data that we know needs to be integrated. So rather than pushing every single customer from Business Central into a data warehouse or into a CRM system, we're only going to be incrementally sending data as it's modified. So rather than pushing 100 records every hour, we'll only push the 1 or 2 that have been modified. Where it gets really powerful is the capability to track anything. So any table, any field, and also creates updates or deletes. So it lets you track all of the different types that you could need. So it gives us a lot of flexibility to work with customer requirements that aren't just copy this field over here. It's managing the full life cycle of the record. And we can do all of that without any custom code. So what I want to do is give a little demo of what this could look like. So the scenario is we have master data. I want to push that master data, customers in this case, from Business Central to a SQL data warehouse. And I want to push it into Salesforce. So every single time that a finance person updates the customer record, I want to make sure that a CRM system is updated and our data warehouse for reporting is updated. I want to set this up to run every 10 minutes so that all of my systems can be close to real time in sync. So jumping into product here, in Smart Connect, once you've set up a Business Central connection and you've installed our change tracking extension from AppSource, you'll be able to set up a change tracking data source. So under data sources, we have change triggers. And I'm going to create a new change trigger here. We have change triggers for some of our other systems as well. So you could use it with SQL or Dynamics CRM. For Business Central, it's really powerful just because it does give us access to tables that aren't normally exposed in the API. Some systems like Dynamics CRM or the Dataverse will expose all tables. The standard API is not going to do that, so this is a good way to get access to those tables that aren't an API. So I'm going to call this customers GB. And then I'm going to select my Business Central environment. And it'll ask me which company I want to track changes on, and then which table. So if you've worked with the Business Central APIs or one of our other data sources, you'll notice that there are a lot more tables in here because this is giving me every standard or custom table. So for instance, if I scroll down here to the P section and maybe not in this one. So if we go to the E's, just to find a table that's not a standard table. So I have some custom E1 tables, those show up in here as well. So any standard or custom table that's in your environment is automatically going to be visible. So I'm going to grab customer. If I click save, I now have the full data of that table. So what that means is all I've done is selected the table. I can go and create one. So I'm going to say MS SQL BC customer. The data source is changes only, pulling from Business Central change data source. And then if we find our customer's GB data source and we preview, there's no data yet, but we can see that it has all of my table fields already here, ready to be mapped. I want this to track creates and updates, so I'm going to check those boxes. If you want to track deletes, you could uncheck those and do deletes. So it either does creates and updates or deletes. If you want to track all three, you just have to set up two integrations. So creates and updates. Target is going into a Microsoft SQL table. Okay, and we'll put it into this table. So now mapping this rest of the integration setup is fairly standard. I'm just going to copy my fields across. And I'm also going to map the customer number field here. And I'll check the update existing box. So with that done, if I save it, as soon as you save the integration with these checkboxes set, it's now tracking that in my data source. So in Business Central, if I go to customers and I open one of my sample ones, and I'm going to give him a phone number, go back. So now I've made a change to that record. So if I preview, I can see that there's now one record pending. If I were to go back into Business Central, find another one, save this one, and preview, you can see it's picking up all of those changes as they happen. In Business Central, I'll also be able to see the data in the change maintenance table, and it's just showing those records that are pending. So I can also view it in here, but this is something that's managed completely by Smart Connect, so I don't need to ever edit the data that's in here. This is just another way for me to see what data has been tracked. In here, you can see it has all of the source fields on it that I could need. I'm happy with this, so I'm going to run the integration. So one of the benefits of having a managed solution like Smart Connect doing this is I don't need to keep track of what data has been processed, what hasn't. The integration will take care of that. So because both records processed successfully, if I come back over here and I refresh the page, refresh, it's just deleted them out. So because they've been processed, we don't need to remember that that change happened. So the next time that I run this integration, it sees no data there to process. So it's doing all that tracking for me. Now, let's say I wanted to be a little bit more fancy here. If I go back to my data source, if everything you need isn't just in the source table, you can bring in additional detail by linking a service. So let's say I also want to take this same data source and import it into my CRM system, but I want to make sure that I correctly assign the right salesperson to the customer. So in the customer table, you're going to get the salesperson code of Joe. And maybe my CRM system doesn't know the salesperson as Joe, it knows them as Jim Olive, or it knows it by Jim Olive's email address. So I want to go and pull data out of that related table by adding a linked service. So I'm going to say after you pull the customer, then pull the salesperson, add a filter where the code on the salesperson is equal to the salesperson code. So now I'm going to get all of the extra fields here from the linked salesperson code web service also included in my data source. So without having to do anything extra, I've now expanded what I have, kind of giving you a complex query capability without having to do extra configuration or creating an AL query or something like that. So next, I'm going to take the same data source that's already successfully sending data to SQL, and I'm going to create a CRM integration. So in this case, my CRM is Salesforce, and I'm going to just import some BC customers into that record as well. So changes only, Business Central, pulling from my customers GB, so you can link as many processes as you want to that one data source. and I'm going to track creates and updates for this one as well. So then I'm going to go into Salesforce. And I'm going to import them into an account. Okay, so let's find my customer number field, because I want this to be the key when I import it. And we're going to say the name is name, and the number, so the account number, we're going to say is the number coming from my data source. So I'm going to save this. Not mapping a lot of fields because you just kind of want to do a simple example here. Because this is now also tracking in Business Central, if I were to open a new customer and modify something, if I go into my E1 change maintenance table, we can see that for that one customer, it's now putting 2 entries in here because we have 2 different maps watching that single table. So now if I maybe add a task to this one saying run SQL. So I'm just going to tell this first integration to run the SQL integration first. And just to show it on another tab. So let's run this. Okay, so it's going to do my MS SQL data. Looks like it already pulled it. Oh, it's my, I don't have a salesperson, so it's not going to work. Remove that. So because those integrations didn't find anything, my 2 records are still sitting in Business Central. So let's try that one more time. So now I found my 1 record for my SQL warehouse and my 1 record for Salesforce. So one of the good benefits to building an integration like this is what happens if the record fails. So if you were to do something based on dates or just a static query, you wouldn't have a way of knowing what records failed, what records succeeded. So if in here, I'm going to modify my integration and I'm going to remove the update existing. So if the record already exists in Salesforce, I'm going to get an error now. So what I'm going to do in here is we'll open my customer. We'll make another change. So this one already exists in Salesforce, but this one does not. So if we refresh, we can see our newly created one that's going to fail, and the one that already, or that doesn't exist already, should succeed. So my 2 records imported to SQL, that's fine. For my Salesforce integration, one of the records failed because it already existed. So if I were to check our handy staging table, you'd see that even though it had 4 records to process, only one of them is stuck. So the next time that I'm ready to run this integration, SQL finds nothing, Business Central for Salesforce finds 1, and it's still failing in here with that same error. So I've been getting emails or notifications. One of these customers is stuck. Every time the integration runs, it attempts it, but it keeps failing. How do we troubleshoot that? I can see the error message. I could go and fix it, or in this case, I'm just going to say, let's delete him out of here. So we're just going to say delete. So now there is no duplicate in Salesforce anymore. So if I run the integration one more time, it's going to find that one record and successfully process that one record. So now I no longer have my pending record. It's now processed, and in the future I'll have 0 records until another change occurs. So in summary, what I've been able to do is easily track any standard or custom field on the customer table. When a modification in Business Central is made, I'm pushing that out to 2 different systems, a SQL table and a CRM system, so that without having to write a line of custom code, I'm now linking up 3 different systems together. So this is something that can be configured very quickly. As soon as you know what the business requirement and the logic is, which fields you need to map, it's really just selecting some fields from a drop-down list and linking it all together. So we really streamlined the process. And no matter what table you select, it's going to work exactly the same way. So there's no limit to how many tables and maps and objects that you can configure in this. You can track everything. All right, so that was our demo showing what it looks like. It's simple, easy to configure, but I wanted to take some time to also talk about when to use it. So when does it even make sense to use change tracking? Because it doesn't apply in every scenario. There are tables that we would not recommend setting up change tracking on, and there are ones where we would. So let's start with when to do it. So here's 3 categories that we hear about really common scenarios using change tracking. So e-commerce. So when you're trying to integrate a web shop or a marketplace with your ERP, you may have a large product catalog. So maybe you sell thousands of items and you want to make sure that you keep the web shop up to date with everything that's happening. So most web-based systems such as Shopify or BigCommerce are going to limit you on how much data you can push in a day, in an hour, in a minute. And we want to make sure that we're respecting those limitations. So by tracking for changes and only pushing modified data, we're going to get a very efficient integration, pushing up pricing changes, inventory updates, modifications to a customer address, whatever it is that you need, but we're not pushing up any more data than we need to. So this is going to give us the best performance and allow us to really respect the limits of those systems that we're integrating with. Master data management. So this is the scenario that I just showed with syncing that data to Salesforce. Say you have internal systems and you may have your CRM system or your ERP as the system of record, and you want to make sure that changes are reflected everywhere. So if a customer's address or the primary billing contact is updated, we want to make sure that all of the other systems are aware of that and can take action on it. That's where master data management is important. We could also use this to just update Business Central to Business Central. So we have some customers, particularly here in Europe, where they have multiple Business Central environments. Maybe you have completely separate deployments or companies for different localizations, regions, countries, and we want to sync changes between them. So if you create an item, you might want to be able to sell that item in any company that you have. So we can take that data and filter it down to every other company that you have. Or if you have multiple different types of ERP, maybe some regions are still on Nav on-premise, or they're using BC on-premise, or they have Dynamics GP, we can take updates from Business Central and push it down to any other ERP that they're using. So we can really manage your data and push that to as many different systems as you need based on a single activity, based on a single change that's made. So there's a lot of systems here that fit into the category. This master data management is probably the reason that most of our customers are using it. They have, they want that one change that happens in their ERP to filter down into every other application that they use. The final one is data warehousing. So if you've done a data warehousing project or a larger reporting project, you're familiar with the different methods that data can be exported. It can either be data replication, where you take an entire table and you copy that over to the target system, and then you delete what's already there and copy it over again the next day. These are typically going to have higher costs because we're moving around so much data, and they're going to be difficult to get real-time data because it takes so long to do full data replication. So with the Smart Connect change tracking approach, we're going to only send the deltas, the changes, the incremental differences between the data from Business Central to your data warehouse tool. So this is going to allow us to back up that data incrementally, so only when it's changed. And then if for some reason something failed to reach your warehouse, we would be able to just keep retrying and have all of that built in. A really powerful feature here is the deletes. So one of the big reasons that a lot of analytics specialists are going to do full table replication and delete and rewrite entire tables is it can be difficult to track those deletes. How do you know when something has changed? You have to know at the time that it's deleted that something was deleted. So because Smart Connect is completely embedded in Business Central, we can track those deletes and handle deletes seamlessly without needing to do full table replication. So in order to make things work efficiently, that's why we're doing it here. So some examples would be SQL servers, data lakes, or just anything that needs to get into Power BI a little bit faster. Leveraging the data warehouse strategy powered by change tracking can give you a lot of flexibility to work with it. So I don't have a slide here. I feel like I should have on the other side. So the times where you wouldn't use change tracking, and that's going to be really for the data that doesn't change. If we think about Business Central, there's certain tables that are fairly static, such as the ledger tables and the history tables. We don't want to track every single change that happens to those records. Instead, we only want to push them to a data warehouse or to another system incrementally as they change. So by only tracking that data that is newly created, we don't need to have a complex change trigger setup. We can just say, give me all records posted today. So it's a lot simpler. You're gonna get better performance, and tracking those tables can slow down the posting procedure. So we don't want to track ledger tables unless absolutely necessary. But for most ongoing integration scenarios, they fit into one of these three buckets, and you'll be able to really see improved performance with change tracking. So that's what I had for today. Looks like we're right on time. Are there any questions? You can throw those into the questions pane if you have them. The last thing that I want to say is this is a really powerful feature that we're going to continue to expand on in Business Central in the future. So if you haven't used it yet, I encourage you to go out and try it. If you have tried it and you have any questions or suggestions for the future, we're always open to that. Especially in my role as one of the product owners, I'm very interested in the feedback from our customers and partners about what works and what can be enhanced and how can we do it, or even if it's just here's a cool story about how we use change tracking. Always open to that, so you can reach out to me or anyone else on the product team. We're happy to help and give you guidance and take that to heart. So I don't see any questions, so I think we're good to call it for today. Thank you everyone for attending, and hopefully we'll see you soon.